we were talking about Iran, which is a very dangerous situation. Don't think out there that it doesn't affect you, because as much as Iran, and not the Iranian people, but let's say at least Mahmoud Ahmadinejad hates Israel and wants Israel wiped off the map, they're not so crazy about us either. Let's ask Michael Eisenstadt, a senior fellow at Washington Institute for Near East Policy, their website, washingtoninstitute.org, what he thinks. And Michael, welcome. Very nice to meet you.
Good morning.
How do we go about this issue with Iran? What are our options, since we know sanctions don't work? And how much do you think this administration would support Israel if Israel decided it's time to at least take out a few of these Iranian nuclear sites?
Well, our options are increasingly limited. The administration has one last option on the table with regard to sanctions, which is sanctioning Iran's central bank. But it appears that the administration has decided that because of the potential harmful economic impact of those kind of sanctions, especially with the United States and Europe trying to stay out of recession, this potential sanction on Iran, which really could potentially destroy their economy, is off the table, which leaves now the possibility of, which a lot of people are talking about, of Israeli preventive military action. And there's apparently a debate going on in Israel right now. Part of it apparently seems to be motivated by a desire to kind of energize international diplomacy against Iran. But part of it also reflecting likely a real debate about whether Israel should launch or not. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody has any idea whether Israel, at the end of this year, once U.S. commitment to defending Iraq's airspace has lapsed and U.S. troops are out of Iraq, whether Israel will strike or not. So I think a lot of people are very concerned about that possibility. But really, right now, we're looking to work with our allies outside of the framework of the Security Council at the UN, where nothing's going to happen because of Russia and China have threatened to veto any kind of sanctions, to see if we could incrementally ramp up kind of some modest sanctions that might be possible to put on Iran. But those are not going to really yield any kind of significant outcome.
What countries would come to Iran's defense if it got so heated that Israel decided to take action? What's the support that they have in the region, and should we be directing our efforts toward them preemptively?
Well, Iran doesn't really have many friends, and its main ally, Syria, right now is involved in putting down its own Arab Spring movement, and its army is pretty heavily involved in that. And I don't see Syria really being able to make a major contribution to any Iranian effort to retaliate for an Israeli strike. Now, Hezbollah is another matter, and Hezbollah has to decide whether it wants to risk its security and its situation in Lebanon on behalf of its traditional patron. I have to think that Israelis are assuming that if they strike Iran, Hezbollah will fire off rockets and missiles against Israel. Israel has the ability to deal with some of these, but nowhere near. They don't have the defenses in place to deal with the level of bombardment that the Hezbollah is capable of inflicting on Israel. But I think the Israelis, I think part of the debate is in order to stop Iran's nuclear program, at least for several years, are they willing to take the possibility of a bombardment? And I think at least some Israelis would be willing to incur that kind of risk.
It's interesting to keep in mind that it's not just Iran that Israel is facing, but as you said, Hamas and Hezbollah. Do they have the capability, you're concerned, you say, about the capability against all of them. Can you make a prediction on whether or not they'd make a preemptive strike?
Israel? I don't think anybody really knows. I think it's a 50-50 odds, and depending on which side of the bed I get up on each morning, one day it looks like they might do it, and the other day, not quite sure. Keep in mind, though, they've been kicking the can several years down the road simply because I think they've gone to the abyss, they've looked in it, and they realize the risk that this entails in terms of heating up the region and the conflict with Iran, which they really are in many ways. Israel's at war with Iran because Iran has been engaged in supporting terrorist groups that are still, even on a daily basis, launching rockets into southern Israel. I think one thing they are concerned about is is the impact of preventive action on the relationship with the United States. And that's something which they take very seriously and which they absolutely do not want to do any harm to. So I would say right now I don't see, in the near term, I don't see them acting, but I think this is something which is quite possible after the end of the year.